Lamadan Gompoje Tsujabeyan La Chatselo Gangi Loju Jibni Jinja Nitare Namda Rabzalwe Nye Dungun Jin Ziji Niki Tukar Le Pamzi Kanda Zipe Tsunjar Mari Muntom Dunga Tisirwe Roto Guna Puji Tarze Yela Juju Yangden Zum Rotare Cherjo Nyunmo Nilo Leki Chado Rote Jin Mari Munze Dunga Nyugu Jinye Juze Raji Nam Dune Dagjin Sachi Tarzun Yunten Luzo Jase Tuku Chudak Chudan Juni Jenje Daglu Munze Jambe Yanla Du Omarabasana Didi Omarabasana Didi Omarabasana Didi Omarabasana Di Zeden Jeki Jenrab Usegi Daglu Di Mumun Parabsalne Gadan Denji Yunlu Tokpai Lodru Bobe Nawa Tadu So Gangze Tawar De Bam Junze Jiwar De Nayak Gonpo Jamyan Jenini Gelme Parayan Tongwal Sho. Welcome to class. So, hello, yes.
Sorry for jumping in. I just want to say that I was terribly overwhelmed with other deadlines, and I'm very much behind with the homework. Hopefully, I could still gradually work them out and send them to you next week or and the week after. I mean, somehow.
Yeah, of course.
With a huge delay.
Of course. Take your time. I recommend, however, doing them slowly. Even just do a couple of lines at a time, one or two, rather than sending them all at once. Just for learning.
Yeah. So this is what I'm going through one of the three pictures that you sent and meticulously working out every word and everything, but it goes very slow. But it's probably worth it to be slow but high quality.
Yeah,
anyway,
for sure.
I don't want to distract the attention.
No, it's good. Actually, I was going to mention some things about the homework, actually. So the homework was, of course, to practice reading, but also it was, you guys were meant to translate the first of the pictures. Because the grammar is very simple, and the first one is just basically yin and min. Something is not. So I recommend doing this. This will be also useful. Then I was mentioning before Federico arrived about how to practice reading. We have to divide and conquer, so to say. We cannot be focusing on translation and at the same time focusing on how to make the sounds. These are actually two completely different skills. Of course, they're related because they're part of the language, but it's better to split the practice time onto only one aspect. For example, if we were to take this first prayer, I think you guys are good now at looking up things on the dictionary. It's actually easier, I guess, than to pronounce. But here is opposite. Just so you guys know, here the locals especially the native Tibetan speakers, and there's many like Himalayan Nepali people who they're Buddhists. They don't are not necessarily Tibetan speakers. Maybe their language might be related to Tibetan or not, but they all can read actually. They can all read pretty much perfectly, but they have no idea what anything means. I was thinking our situation is perhaps a little bit the opposite. Now we have the dictionary, we can look everything up, but the pronunciation is what's wobbly. So then I was mentioning, like, I watched this documentary. Actually, I want to go trekking up in the mountains when the spring starts. So I'm looking at all these guys going trekking and up in the mountains. And they go to these monasteries, and then in these monasteries, all these little monks are learning how to read, and they're spelling out loud. So I was saying, I regret. Maybe I should have spent time doing what they do. Basically, what happens is you guys can see in all the documentaries this is happening, all the trekking blogs and everything. There's the teacher, he's spelling out loud, and then the student repeats after them. So they do that a lot in when learning how to read, and yeah, I think that's very repetition is key, in this case, basically I explain the rules and I push the guys, okay, just read now. I think this approach they're taking might be, I mean, it takes longer in a way because we have to see it and go every day, do it, do it, do it, do it. They have more time, I feel like. In our case, because time is limited, they kind of force you to learn the rules and then read. So I'm thinking how to approach this. I want to correct you guys' reading, although I have heard a lot of improvement already. It sounds, I'm happy. I'm happy with the readings that I have received, the audio files I have received. But anyways, just some food for thought. As to how, and then maybe I might also just go over how to read, how to spell out loud. I think this is important actually. In the beginning, I thought I wasn't going to be able to cover so much material in this short time, but I think we're doing good in time. So I might take a class to cover how to spell out loud, because I feel like that's also a little bit what we might be lacking, because that's what we lack, the ability to practice. It's easy to sit with our book or with a computer and translate and get the meaning. That's fun, actually. I think it's fun, at least. But maybe not so much opportunity to practice reading out loud. Something else I would recommend, because at least for me, like finding beauty in the poetry of Tibetan is wonderful and inspiring. And by poetry, I mean the prayers in our case. I mean, we're learning Tibetan because we want to learn Dharma, right? I don't think. Actually, interesting fact about Tibetan literature is that at least up until the last few years, is basically exclusively Dharma. Like the Tibetans weren't writing novels about random things, or I would say like maybe like 90, I'm just guessing, but I'm gonna guess like 95 to 98% of everything written in Tibetan was Dharma. It's very unusual if you consider other cultures, what percentage of their literature was dedicated to so-called religious or spiritual practice. I mean, look at the West in Europe, like they were writing all sorts of things, right? So since we are here to learn Dharma, and I assume, at least, I don't know, maybe you're not, but I'm assuming that you're here to learn Dharma, and then we're finding beauty in the poetry of those prayers. They're extremely beautiful, actually, in Tibetan. I recommend thinking of which ones you like, I gave a playlist of the ones that I like on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have it, or at that time, I think I introduced it a little bit too early. Still might be a little bit too fast, but from there, I recommend picking some prayers. For example, there's Sangchu Monlam, which is called, I forget the Sanskrit name, they call prayer for excellent conduct, which is really nice. I consider this prayer to be a little bit psychedelic because the Buddhas are it says in one atom there are as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and they're all it's just like mind-blowing if you understand what they're saying. Basically, it's destroying our conception of what is space and time, just in the beginning, the way we're visualizing the prayers that the Buddhas as we pray to them. I mean, that's one example. Another really beautiful one and shorter is this one might be good actually. It's called, usually it's just called Mahaguru. Is a prayer, excuse me, it's from Pema Limpa cycle. Pema Limpa is a famous Bhutanese Tibetan. He is his dharma, but actually what the prayer was recited by Yeshet Sogyal right before Guru Rinpoche left. So it's her supplication to Guru Rinpoche as Guru Rinpoche is about to leave, So there's this kind of like an emotional thing happening, but it's such a beautiful prayer, and it's a little bit short. Another popular one is Kuntu Kunsang Monlam, the aspiration prayer of Kuntu Sampo. It's also really, really nice. Maybe you guys have heard it. There's Guru Rinpoche prayers like Parchen Lamsel, Sampalu Juma. So there's many, many prayers. Actually, they're all in the chuche that I sent, that I was using that purple. I have somewhere here, I have a paper copy. Basically, what I'm saying is look to these prayers, or maybe in your Dharma center, your local Dharma center, or whatever. Also, there are some prayers that they do. These are common prayers. These are not like daily liturgies. Like our daily practices are one thing. These are common manlams that we would recite at the end of every puja, basically. Usually people recite in the evening. So what I'm saying basically is find prayers that you like and start reciting them, go over word by word and recite them. Sometimes it's enjoyable and it's musical. If you like music, the beauty is that if there is a rhythm. Um, are there any prayers that you guys know of that you like? I'm sure Claire likes some prayers. Do you? Which do you know
Recently,
any?
I typed out like a Tibetan only version of Peke Lingpa's prayer for global aspiration prayer for global well-being. That's meant to
Mm,
avert nuclear war and biological warfare.
mm.
It's a short 4-line prayer, and so I've been practicing with that one a little bit.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, that's the way to go. That's exactly what I'm saying, actually. Yeah.
I find it helpful when, there's a prayer that I already know, that I've already recited a lot of times with English transliteration, and then take away the English and then try reading like that. It's been helpful.
Exactly. I had the exact same experience. I used to recite, for example, this Kunzang Monlam, this aspiration prayer of Samantha Madra, and also I used to recite the Chakching Monlam, the Mahamudra aspiration by the third Karmapa in English before I learned Tibetan. Then when I looked at the Tibetan, everything made sense, so to say, because I already knew what the meaning was. Yeah. There's a website called Lotsawa House. Do you guys know this website? Yeah. Lotsawa House, you can click and then everything turns into Tibetan. So then you can just have it all in Tibetan right away. It'll say Puik. You click there and then your player only turns in Tibetan, which is I think is nice, and you can print it for, and everything is copyright free. It's quite a nice. There's a few mistakes, small mistakes here and there, but it's generally quite right on. Yeah, so I recommend doing that. Yeah, I guess maybe these prayers that I mentioned might feel long now, but I feel that just going for it is good, you know. If you do it every day. When I was
What
staying
was
and
the
I
name?
was the website?
No, you had mentioned that first prayer. You said that talked about the Buddhas, an infinite number of Buddhas in an atom or
Oh,
something, and you said it was in the prayer book you would send
yeah,
us. Can you just send us that page number that appears on,
sure,
or send us a link to that?
sure, I will. It's
Okay,
called
thank you.
Sanctum Manlam. It's a really everybody recites this prayer, especially they usually take the first part and they use it as a sample for the 7 branch offering prayer. But the whole thing is longer. When I was staying in this retreat place for a few months, we recited every day, 4 times a day, actually, after every session. It takes around 15 minutes to recite if you do it at a medium pace. And at the beginning, I couldn't keep up and I didn't understand anything, but doing it every day so many times, it begins to go into the brain, you know? So that's one way also to do it. We have to find a method that works for us. But in English, it's called the Aspiration Prayer for Noble Conduct, I believe. Samantha Badra's Aspiration Prayer for Noble Conduct. It's a very, very popular prayer, very extremely popular. And the original is in Sanskrit. So this is a Tibetan prayer, which was translated from Sanskrit. This is also something good to keep in mind. Whether the prayer has been translated from Sanskrit or is this a so-called native Tibetan prayer. You will begin to notice a different grammar. Once you start to read more, you can begin to see, oh, this is from Sanskrit. You can see it doesn't quite flow in the Tibetan. They kind of forced it to fit the number of syllables. So this is one example. This is originally a Sanskrit prayer. Versus the termas are native Tibetan. Somehow they were stored in the cloud in Tibetan, then downloaded by the Tibetans. So this is cool about the terma tradition. Also is really interesting, and it's also interesting if you know grammar, how the terma's grammar and vocabulary is actually a little bit different than the a little bit more modern compositions. You can see that grammatically even. It's like more archaic, especially in Dujung Limpa's. I heard this story that Dujung Limpa came to Mipam and he said he showed him some of his termas. Like Mipam said, "Oh, like grammar points like this would be even more beautiful." But Dujung Limpa refused. You know, he said, "No, you cannot touch the terma. It is, this is the way the terma is. We have to keep it." There's also another. Changmon Control wanted to do the same thing with Dujung Limpa. He wanted to edit Dujung Limpa's termas to put them in the Rinchen Terzo. I don't know if you know what the Rinchen Terzo is. The Rinchen Terzo is this massive collection of termas that Janggon Control was a genius, basically. He was basically like a Da Vinci of Tibetan Buddhism. And he was systematizing all these lineages. So Janggon Control produced this text called the Rinchen Terzo. It's the treasury of all the termas that were available at his time. So nowadays, when lamas do this lung, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months, even up to 9 months to do the whole thing, just a reading transmission. Actually, Sanjay Nyempa Rinpoche just did it last year in Sikkim. Occasionally, lamas do it. So, but there's none of Dujung Limpa's termas in there because Dujung Limpa told Jammu Control, you cannot edit my termas. If you put them, you put them on. If not, you don't put any. And Jungle Control, I guess he didn't want to do that. He wanted to edit because he wanted to fit as many thermas as possible. That's why Dujon Limpa's thermas are not in the Rinchen Terzo. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off topic. Time for grammar. Oh, did you guys understand what I meant by Tade and Tamide? Yeah, Kip, do you want to paraphrase whatever you understood?
So I'm not sure I understood the question. Can you rephrase the question?
So last class, the difficult topic was Tade verbs and Tamide. There's 4 kinds of verbs, right?
Right.
We're calling them existential. I'm sorry, linking existential. And then for the other 2, we're keeping the Tibetan word Tade and Tamide.
So the honest answer is that last week I flipped back to the pronunciation, and so
Yeah.
I didn't. So I was not going to actually. So I did not study the verbs so much this week. When we get to the, I don't want. If we get to the homework for that, I will go back. So I was in pronunciation mode last week and clearly didn't do that
No, it's
well.
good.
But
No, it's good. It's good. Actually, Kip made a lot of improvement in his pronunciation. I'm very, very pleased. That was very nice. What about Satya? What did you understand from our Tade Tamide discussion?
I would say I don't really understand.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
I need to rewatch the videos and like integrate the teachings more.
Yeah. No, it's good. That's why I'm asking. I want to make sure. I want to check in what's happening. So I don't fly through. What about Zan? Do you get it? What did you get from Tade and Tamide?
I don't really get it also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. Okay. Repetition is key. So we'll go over it again. Yes, in very simple way of saying this. Well, the first 2 verbs are clear, right? In and yu. That makes sense, right? They're both forms of to be.
yes.
In is something equals something. That is the formula. No particles or anything. And it could be missing. So this is the formula to be understood for yin. For yu, yu is telling you something exists somewhere. And usually something exists or something exists somewhere. If something exists somewhere, then somewhere is marked by a Ladon particle. They're both forms of to be. They're both would be translated as to be, or you. The second one, the existential verb, can be translated as it exists or it is there. There is something somewhere. So far, so good, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, the other verbs are, yeah, conceptualizing them. The key is to conceptualize the difference, really. The main thing is to conceptualize the difference here. So basically, we have for Tade means separate. Tamide means the negation of separate. Mi is negating. So Tamide is not separate. Okay? So just that much should give us some sense of what is coming. What is it that is separate? The thing doing the action, and that where the action is done, they're separate. For example, I drink tea. I drink tea. I need to drink the tea. I cannot just drink. So these two things are separate. Or I throw the cup. I need the cup to throw. I cannot just throw. I need that thing. Like we're separate. For tamide is the opposite. So I die. That's I die. I don't need anything. I can die. You know, it's not separate. Just that. That's the main thing. Does the question here is, does the verb is the agent acting on something else? Does the agent need to act on something else? Or is the agent just doing the thing by itself? The last week we used the example, the sun shines or the sun rises. The sun rises is tamide because the sun is rising and that's it. There's no it's doing it by itself, onto itself. In essence, this is the difference. Is that clear? No, a little bit. Yeah.
It is clear. And actually, you did a great job of explaining this last week. But when you said Tade and Tommy Day, that's what I didn't.
Yeah.
I
I'm
couldn't.
trying.
My
Yeah.
brain doesn't recognize those terms yet. But as you explained it,
Yeah.
yes, you did explain this last week. Yes.
But yeah, think of it as Tade is separate, Tamide is not separate. That's the literal meaning. Usually, in most Tibetan grammar books, you will find the words transitive and intransitive, which is a similar, very, very similar meaning. You might see that. So transitive is Tade, intransitive is Tamide. Again, there is a negation there, intransitive, Tamide. So
And just
that's
this also, and you did answer this. This was the question I had posed. So this was in footnote 44, that TD and TMD, that the TD is yes. Now I
yes,
get it. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
Tamide, TMD. It's like a silly abbreviation, I guess. So it's not as, to be honest, it's not as simple as this in a way. There's more to it, but this is the basic concept. This is what we first need to understand. Now, the particles will tell us what's happening. Okay, so let's go to our wonderful text. Can we see the text? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, like I said, Tade separate, Tamide not separate. So that in itself is already telling us what's happening. Tade verbs here is divided into three: the doer, the action, the object, and the agent. This is one way of conceptualize it, but I feel like it doesn't even need to be that complicated. We can even make it simpler. So here's some examples just in English, just to understand it in English. I eat an apple. I is the agent. The apple is the object. And eat is the, I cannot see so well because the cameras are blocking. Okay. He does his work. He does his work. So there's things like the old man cuts the big tree. The old man, the object is the big tree. Cuts, they're separate, etc. That's quite clear. Now, tamide is the agent itself is influenced by the action. Okay. This is very important. In the beginning, I didn't appreciate the importance of tade and tamide personally. I ignored it for almost like 1 year, I think. I thought, oh, that's not doesn't matter. I thought doesn't matter for translation. But later I realized I was being very stupid because actually it completely changed the meaning and the grammatical structure of the sentence. So this is quite important. Korwa la kiewa, to be born in samsara. Korwa la, korwa is samsara. Literally, it's a cycle, which implies cyclic existence, korwa. Korwa la, in, la is the ladun particle, marking where? Korwa la. So something is going to happen in korwa. Kiewa. Kiewa is birth. Birth in samsara. So this would be tamide. Because la is not necessary in this case. There is birth. What is being born? That is the let me ask Federico, what is the agent of this sentence?
The agent is probably a person. Well, a being, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. It's not there, basically.
It's not very. It depends on how you look at it, but maybe one interpretation is that the agent is there's no agent. Maybe I don't know.
Exactly.
If it's
Yeah.
non-volitional, then maybe there's no agent.
Exactly. Yeah. There is no agent. That was a trick question. Yeah, you guys can see that there is no subject here. There is something is born in somewhere, but we're not sure what is being born or who is being born. This is important when we're looking at the sentences in Tibetan, because then like we have to provide, if we're translating, we have to provide the subject. Sometimes in English it doesn't sound good, if we don't have a subject. Yeah, but there is no agent. So when we do, I'm sorry, I'll just go over a couple more examples of tamide. To rise, to be confused, to go, to become, to turn by oneself. These are all examples of tamide. The sun rises, sentient beings are confused, they themselves are confused, etc. Now this is the key to understand in terms of our formula. The tade verbs, now the agent is marked by the agentive particle. So now we're introducing our new particle here. It's called the agentive particle. Basically, it's the same as the connective particle, except you add that sa after. So when you see that particle, that is marking the agent of something. Then the object usually is determined whether if it's a direct object or an indirect object by means of the la. Sometimes there is no particle, which we can generally, this is not super important, but just so you know, direct object usually no particle, indirect object usually particle, and then the tade verb in the end. So this is our formula, our key formula for tade verbs. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Satya, how are you doing? Does that make any sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Um, okay,
I have a
Satya.
question,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
and maybe it'll become clear as we look at the examples, but
Sure.
I guess if you're reading, you can see that these particles are different. But if you're speaking, it could seem like a possessive particle, or
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
just like the word order that shows it, or
Usually is that the timing of how you say it. For example, I would say, like if I'm talking to my teacher and I want to tell him, oh, I drank the tea, I would say nge cha song. Nge, or like nga sa nge is the agentive particle. You usually would emphasize it. You make the emphasis, especially because, yeah, like you said, it's not obvious. Also, oh, I was going to mention this. Actually, I didn't want to. I'm trying to be easygoing with readings, you know. Obviously, we don't know the meaning yet, so the pronunciation in general was fine from the recordings that I heard. However, when Tibetan is read, usually the reader is already putting putting the words together into chunks. Of course, I'm not blaming you at all. You guys did a really good job, okay? But the ways you guys were reading, like it was just like one syllable, one syllable. Like if you were reading, if a Kempo is reading the text, for example, you can hear that the Kempo is tun 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 ki tun tun tun. So the way it is read is telling you the nominal groups basically. So in the future, once you practice more reading, then this will become natural. It doesn't sound pleasant if it's not if the one doesn't do that. It's confusing actually. Of course, I'm praising your reading. Then this is not a criticism, but just know that eventually, like the way we read it, the way we say what we emphasize when we pronounce comes out. Okay, does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay, I just wanna ask Satya, can you tell me, can you break this down in terms of its parts? Agent, particle, object, and verb? I think you're muted. We cannot hear you.
So, yeah, Sange, I would say, is the agent.
And how do you know? How do you know that Sanjay is the agent?
Well, because it's the first in the sentence, and it's not an object and it's not a verb. So it must be the agent. And it's the first in the sentence.
This is actually not always the case. That's a good guess. I would normally also guess that because it's first, but that could not be the case also.
Okay.
The reason you know this is because of the agentive particle here. That key.
What's that called again?
Agentive particle.
Agentive particle.
So the particle is making that into the agent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Key.
Key. So this is telling you that this is the agent. Remember, the particle always modifies that which is right before it. So this is telling me that this is the agent, actually. Not necessarily. Because if I flip this, if I put ch sanje ki ten, I would have to translate it the same way, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it always a key?
It could be ki, gi, ji, yi, or a sa added to something,
Okay.
depending
Oh
on
yeah, I
the,
see that.
yeah. It will depend, the spelling will depend, as usual, as always, it depends on the suffix of the previous syllable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but these are all, these five will function as the agentive particle, marking the agent. So if I see an agentive particle in a sentence, I already know, oh, this is a tade verb coming up somewhere. So that's how it works. If you see the agentive particle, you already, in your brain, you should look, oh, okay, where is the verb? Now, our sentences are easy and small, but later, if we're looking at longer texts, like the verb might come after a couple of lines, you know? You never know. It's like you're kind of like fishing. It's almost like decoding some puzzle. Actually, translating Tibetan is like decoding a puzzle, especially the old script, the old text. It really feels like that, you know? So this is a key piece of the puzzle this is giving you a clue, you know? Like you don't know what is the verb. You look at the Tibetan and it's just like a da 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 da, a bunch of things that you don't really know what's happening. So when you see this is a big clue, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, you can continue with your grammatical analysis. So we will have agent, object, and verb, right?
Mhm.
Here.
Right. So ch is mm, ch is dharma. That's the object.
Exactly, yes.
And tan.
Ten.
That's
10 because the na changes the a to the a sound.
10.
Yeah. Even though there is no drembu, when there is a na suffix, it changes the a to the a sound.
Okay.
This becomes
10.
10. Yeah.
10 is taught to teach the verb.
Yeah. Exactly. So we have agent marked by the particle, object, what is it that is being taught, and the teaching itself, the verb. So that's the structure of our sentence. So when we look at these sentences, well, in the beginning, we have to break them down. I'm saying this from my own experience. I used to guess a lot, and it works sometimes, but it's always unclear. If we break it down like this, it makes the meaning really come out, you know, even when we're saying our prayers. For example, there is a prayer I recite, and then it says, oh, by means of this, by means of this practice, may I attain that. I don't know. I don't have the prayer on me right now, but anyways, maybe not a good example right now, but just know that it really clarifies the meaning to do this breakdown. In the beginning, it's a brain exercise, but comes natural after. You just automatically will know. You just automatically get the meaning. Okay.
So in that in that next sentence or fragment, I eat an apple. So the saw is the agentive particle. And so, and I think you maybe said this earlier, but there are times when if it's a saw, it's not standing alone as a separate syllable. There are times when that saw is just tacked on at the end of of the agent, and it's still the particle.
Yes, in this case, because there is no suffix here with nga. Nga by itself would be the personal pronoun I. So because there is just there is nothing to attach, so we have to use this this one, because it ends with a vowel. That's the rule. And we would pronounce. So this nga becomes ni, kushu, sa. I, marked by the agentive particle. Kushu is the object. Sa, the verb. Usually that is the structure, just so you know. I was, well, Satya says not incorrect. I would also make that assumption that this is the agent because it's first, but it's not always the case. That's why I wanted to like make that point, that it would just look for the agentive particle just to be 100% sure. Okay. Federico, you wanna break this one down?
Which one? The third?
Yeah, the third. This one. Where
So
of course
it would be da, du,
D,
chole, pala, ne. So obviously, ne is the verb, and the object is now marked with la, which is Chapa La. Chapa is the Dharma practitioner, and the enemy is just the first syllable, da, but then we have, I believe, this with the gentive sa at the end. I'm not 100% sure.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
100% correct. Very good. So you can see how this, if you were to look up this in the dictionary, it might not recognize it, because this we have to know. Because the dictionary will recognize this as being this, but then you have to recognize that this is an agentive particle.
This is my hypothesis, and I was scrolling up in the PDF file to verify it when you asked me, and I didn't reach.
Yeah, it's okay. That's a good strategy. We didn't notice. So very good, actually. Right on. Ra is enemy. Ra D, this enemy marked by the agentive particle. Chopa, the practitioners. Chopa La, something to the practitioners. Ne. harms. So, Zan, would you do the honors for the fourth one?
Mommy, they draw nam so. So mommy would be the soldier. There is a dead soldier, but there's a star behind, so it would be the agentive particle, and then dranam so enemy and so forth. So the word so is kill, nam so then or. So that soldier, so is the last word which will come before kills the enemies. So it's a plural. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the agentive particle here?
That would be the sa behind the de.
Yeah, good. So this is telling us that this is the agent verb and the object. Good, very good. Are there any questions so far? No. So we have to understand that's this formula, by the way. Okay. So that the formula should make sense. So just to recap, we have 3 formulas so far. This is a formula for you. A marked by la, B, you, or depending where the la is. And then the formula for yin, basically just A plus B. Sometimes, I'm sorry, this is you. Sorry. Yin, A plus B. Basically, because yin could be missing. Yin is the verb that could be missing. So just keep in mind these formulae, I guess, the plural of formula, right? Just keep these things in mind, okay? This whatever is in the square. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting you. A question which is a follow-up question. The question of Claire. Am I right? So, la appears in many contexts, but am I right that your answer was once you recognize the structure, and you should be looking not just for the single words and its nearby surrounding, but the whole structure. Once you recognize the structure within each particular structure, la has a unique role. So somehow, once you nail down the structure within a given template, la has a unique function. So you cannot get confused in this way. Was it the answer?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
However, la itself, let's go up all the way here. So there's 8 grammar cases, which we talked briefly about in the beginning, and I was planning to touch upon that today, but we're almost out of time. So out of the 8 grammar cases which were stolen from Sanskrit and forcefully pushed onto the Tibetan grammar, it seems to me that complex as Sanskrit, but they had to. Tibetans are always trying to elevate their grammar to be like as complex, as sophisticated as Sanskrit, because that makes them cool. Like anyone would do, you want to be like the high culture nearby you. So these are the 8 cases, which I hope we can cover more, talk about a little bit more about them. So ladun happens in 3 out of these 8 cases. So, for example, in this 4th case, dative, La can also, I don't want to confuse you guys, but just to answer your question, la could have another function as well, based on the grammar cases. But for now, just know that the formulas we have learned are gonna tell you without ambiguity what's happening. However, Tibetan is an extremely ambiguous language. So I'm just telling you this as an encouragement. But just know that these texts, so this is, okay, I'm just gonna end this with this because this is important. The text, especially when we talk about tantric texts, they are intentionally cryptic. The people who translated these texts, who have preserved the tradition, they don't want you to read and understand what's happening. You get the text, you go to your guru, so your guru can explain. So actually, the English translations should also keep it cryptic. That's the whole point. There is this new style of translation, which is simplifying and uncryptifying, so to say, and making the meaning, forcing the meaning out, making assumptions. And these translators are not even working with their guru. They're kind of just by themselves drinking coffee and trying to make some easy to read book that can sell. And this is very dangerous. They're destroying the tradition.
Yes.
So be careful for those translators, guys. And don't become one of them, okay?
Yeah, I can fully understand. By the way, in Sanskrit, there's something similar. So maybe in their attempts to emulate Sanskrit, they picked up this habit. For example, in Sanskrit, there might be ambiguities. So two interpretations. I was trying to clarify whether you can unambiguously nail it down, but sometimes there are naturally two or maybe even three interpretations.
Exactly.
And some skillful writers intentionally use the double meaning. It's called a twilight language, and somehow a mark of high sophistication. So of course it makes it super difficult to read.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
doubt. And I agree with you that once you understand the text, often it's difficult, that you wonder how on earth you might translate it to English. And if you translate it somehow, you naturally break down this complexity. So it's a huge oversimplification. You cannot escape it.
Exactly. And if you translate it properly, nobody wants to read your text.
Right.
So it's not good for the publisher. It's not good for the money-making aspect, you know, because nobody who wants to read this cryptic thing that doesn't make any sense, you know. If you make it nice and easy and readable, everybody loves it. And yeah, you sell your book, but then the meaning in the Dharma, that what was meant there is lost. So this is very important to keep in mind when reading Dharma texts, especially translations in English. Yes, guys, and on that note, our class is officially over. Thank you for your attention. I hope a little bit of clarity came through today. So we will keep our exploration of Tibetan grammar after 2 days, I guess. Yeah, 2 days after. Do send your homework if you haven't sent it. I encourage you to. Of course, no, I'm not giving you a grade or anything. It's up to you, but if you want to learn, this will help you. So it's just for your own sake. Okay? Okay, now I will end the recording and we can also say our prayer.